Chisa is possessed, and the loop started at the beginning of Hanami, not the end. One might think the loop happened here, but wait, what about here? Well, what if I told you it all started here? Now that I've recovered from the initial feelings of emptiness, regret, and despair from the ending of 3.1,
emotional damage.
Among the many questions brought up during the quest, one of the biggest mysteries revolves around the causal chain of Rover saving Aemeath, and consequently, Aemeath saving Rover, and further consequently, the world. However, I believe there is a mysterious third entity that has been present ever since we stepped foot in Hanami, and I guarantee it's not who you think. I expected 3.1 story to be layered, but I never expected that it would end up tying back to our heroine from Hanami. In fact, I'm 98% certain Chisa is related to this mystery, and I'm going to prove it using the power of God and anime. Trust me. The clues line up almost too perfectly. With that being said, thank you. Thanks to you all who have supported my channel up to this point. I pray you have an amazing day, week, and year. Big shout out to Kuro Games for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. You never know how or when you'll have an impact, or how important your example can be to someone else. Denzel Washington. Let's begin at the end. Rather appropriate, wouldn't you say? First, I'm going to explain the causal chain up to a certain point. Then we will address the contentious parts of it. Tracing the signal that the radio picked up, Namipon creates a stable route through the rift for Rover and Chisa to get to Lahairoi. We now know that rift was a portal into void space. In 3.0, Namipon says this:
the coordinates have all been calibrated. A smooth landing guarantee.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
What actually happened is that Chisa arrived at her destination while Rover ended up trapped in void space. Why though? I believe this points to three incredible discoveries. The first requires us to go back to the beginning of the video. The loop started at the beginning of 2.8. When Rover gets pulled into the rift by Sumika, we don't go straight to the tower, where she's located during her final moments when she desperately reaches out to Rover for help. Instead, we find ourselves falling in some type of wormhole. Wait, you see that texture? Now where have I seen that before? Oh yeah, void space. It's also worth noting that the song that plays when we first arrive in Hanami starts like this. Now, listen to Rover's first encounter with Aleph 1.
My frequency.
They sound a lot alike if you ask me. That leads us to our second discovery. Aleph 1 may have tried to intercept Rover twice, but why and for what reason? By now you should be catching on. Rover's journey into the loop started the moment we entered the rift. However, there's something else that you might not have picked up on. The third discovery is in Aemeath's animations. When she uses her first ult, we see what could be called a meteor shower with a pink trail, and after her final ult, we see a multitude of pink meteors. Why is this significant? Because we see these same meteors after we first arrive in Hanami City, and again, the night of the party. That night, Chisa did something that opened my eyes to the truth. She made a wish.
In this Hanami summer night, I wish for the moments spent with friends to last forever.
Why is this so important, you ask? Well, if you recall, Hanami was a city in Ashinohara, Chisa's homeland. There are stories of a legendary figure there who grants wishes, but not just any wishes, those that are for the good of the nation. Apparently, she is considered stronger, or at least on the level of a sentinel. Where things get more interesting is when you consider the fact that apparently Chisa resembles this figure. The figure's name is the Miko. Now, for the part that shook my entire understanding of the final scene of 3.1, apparently, the Miko has been working hard in the Frostlands. A conversation between two students named Ashley and Stephanie states, if you ever get lost alone out in the Frostlands, all you have to do is hope, pray, and wait. When a white bird appears, a Miko with white hair dressed in red will suddenly materialize and escort you back to the academy, then vanish without a trace. Her outfit is neither modern nor Royan, says Ashley, and Stephanie says the Miko has been seen talking to President Lucilla. This information sets the foundation for the rest of the video. Let's head back to Hanami City, right as Rover is about to leave. When Rover steps into void space, they see an image of themselves falling to the ground, possibly even dying. They then meet face to eye with Aleph 1, the Thornodian. Before it can absorb Rover's frequencies entirely, it's deterred by way of After the famous nose boop, Aemeath goes back to the past to stop Aleph 1, while a confused Rover heads to Lahairoi to get sideswiped by a class-skipping delinquent on a motorbike. The events of 3.0 and 3.1 play out, and everything seems to make sense until, in an attempt to save Aemeath after her clash with Sigillum, Rover jumps into the Gnungamere, which is similar to the lake the Exostrider sword is sealing Aleph 1 in, named Sundermere. Sundermere meaning divided lake. More on that in this video. Gnungamere comes from the Norse word Gnunga Gap, which is the primordial gaping void in Norse mythology. Mere means lake in Old English, so Gnungamere is a fusion of the terms meaning void, lake. In the lake, Rover grabs Aemeath to rescue her and has a vision akin to a flashback. Aemeath as a child, almost as if Rover is remembering it. The next encounter we have with the lake is where desperation and discovery converge. Rover once again jumps into the Gnungamere to save Aemeath, more specifically, void space. Here is where we see how child Aemeath was saved. Rover of the present, meaning the 3.1 Rover, encounters child Aemeath in void space. The lake is made of two parts, the lake on the top and void space at the bottom. We know in void space, time doesn't move in a straight line. Thus, the conditions were met that allowed the two of them to meet. Present Rover saved child Aemeath from void space, so past Rover can save child Aemeath from the lake. She then grows up to overclock and resonate with the Exostrider, which is the first cause of her quest to save the world. She died and became a digital ghost during the crisis 10 years ago when the Thornodian was about to break the seal. I go over some of those details in my previous video. Fast forward 10 years, she becomes the true resonator of the Exostrider, which basically means she can now resonate with it without needing to overclock. This was achieved by collecting the pieces of herself that were torn apart after she became a digital ghost. With her frequencies restored and the power Sigillum stole from her returned, she was able to traverse void space and go to the past when Aleph 1 first arrived in Soul 3 to help the Exostrider seal it on the other side of the Strider Gate along with herself. With that established, there have been a lot of questions regarding some not so clear occurrences in the story. Among the biggest is how exactly did Rover survive this scene? Did Rover die? If so, who walked out of the lake? If not, how did they survive? Well, my dear viewers, I believe Rover in fact did, and I'm going to prove it.
Did what?
You see, when Rover first—
No, hold on. Did what?
My apologies. I believe Rover did in fact survive. Yes, I'm 98% certain, and it all started with the Hanami heroine herself, Chisa. Let's turn back the clock to when Chisa and Rover were casually walking through Hanami City after the crisis. They came across a fountain, and after splitting the iridgol crystals from the fountain, they found a cassette tape rather curious. There are some details, however, that some may have missed. When Rover touches the cassette tape, we see what we'll call frequency information escaping from Rover's hand. Rover seems to experience something happening, but isn't sure what. Chisa says this.
Random castaways often appear inside the Honami sonorosphere.
What do we have here? Dear viewer, I'm here to inform you that I don't believe it was random at all. Remember the story of the Miko? The sign of her arrival is said to be a white bird. Starting to make sense? Remember Ashley and Stephanie? They said the Miko was seen speaking to President Lucilla. I believe the Miko got the cassette tape from the Academy and intentionally sent it to Hanami City along with Rover's old ID. Remember how when Rover went to get their cassette tape burned with Professor Mornier, there was an error in the system? An identical frequency code existed. Kind of like when you try to download the same file twice into a folder and you're met with a message to either skip the file or replace it. In this case, it was kind of like trying to get an account name, but yours was already taken. What's even crazier is that the file with identical code wasn't in any official archives while also being empty. Mornier decides to overwrite the file, calling it a data error. Now, what I think happened is this. The Miko got Rover's original cassette tape from their folder, as well as Rover's old ID with permission from President Lucilla, and possibly some collaboration with Mornier and Luuk. She then proceeds to drop by Hanami City and deliver these seemingly random castaways Chisa and Rover would later find. Now that we have established the Miko's presence, I'd like to double down. When Rover touched the cassette tape, they created something like a save state that the Miko would later use. Now, let's return to the moment when Rover saved child Aemeath. You know how I said I believe Rover survived after going near translucent? If only there were someone who was used to saving people in the void storm infested Frostlands. Oh wait, bingo! But how exactly? After the party, I always found it strange that Rover would feel the need to fall asleep. They don't get tired so easily, except when they're recovering. In 3.1, Rover needed to recover after integrating Sigillum's stolen frequencies back into themselves. Kinda similar to how the Exostrider had to run diagnostics when the core was returned. The right of return when the Solaskin returned to the Exostrider also caused a period of higher Void Storm activity due to the Exostrider running diagnostics during that time. So, what if Rover fell asleep because in that moment, the Rover who fell into void space was saved by the Miko and was returned to the cafe to essentially have a new game plus. The Miko was reintegrating what was left of 3.1 Rover's frequencies back into 2.8 Rover. When Rover opened their eyes, their hand was normal. They blinked and their hand was translucent, and blinked again and it went back to normal. Seemingly, a process was taking place. What I also found interesting was when Chisa made that wish, the night the meteor shower that revealed Aemeath was passing by, the following day, Rover hears her voice. However, we know that the only way Rover was supposed to hear or perceive Aemeath was due to having the core and later the talisman. So, how exactly did Rover hear Aemeath through the radio? Even if she sends it, Rover still needs to perceive it. Thus, I theorize the Rover who heard Aemeath was one who had already met her. This is why our Rover wakes up and we see the trophy, the story you don't know, because Rover has the experience but not the memory. 3.0, Rover asked a staff member if the cassettes could prevent memory loss and was told, while the burned memory frequencies are a perfect theoretical match to the owner's originals and could, in theory, stabilize the frequencies of someone affected by a void storm through reverse input, such attempts have never truly worked. We're still researching why. This explains what I believe to be the case of Rover's situation. This would also explain how Rover seemingly had a flashback of child Aemeath and Ganungamir, and it all goes back to the Miko, and consequently Chisa. Before the swings, on the swings. When Rover and Chisa get the cassette tape in Hanami. When Rover and Chisa chat outside the cafe after Rover wakes up. It all points back to the Miko. So, what is the relationship between Chisa and the Miko? Now, this is the part of the video where we enter heavy theory crafting territory, so strap in. It's still early, but it's clear there's some connection. I'd like to start with the inspiration behind Chisa. While Chisa visually looks similar to characters like Aemeath from Hellgirl and Akame from Akame Got Kill, Chisa is thematically inspired by a common but adored Japanese trope called, quite literally, a Miko character. Miko characters have the qualities of a spiritual girl who is connected to purification and supernatural elements. Oftentimes, they are shown to lead somewhat of a double life as both a shrine maiden and a schoolgirl. We've seen this throughout media many times. From Kagome Higurashi in Inuyasha, a middle school girl who falls down a shrine well and time travels to Japan's Sengoku or Warring States period. Turns out she's the reincarnation of a priestess named Kikyo from the past. Rei Hino in Sailor Moon, the civilian identity of the heroine Sailor Mars. She works at her grandfather's Shinto shrine in Tokyo while also attending an all-girls Catholic school, creating that duality I referenced earlier. And even more recently with Sakuko Igarashi from Silent Hill F, a close friend to the main character Hinako Shimizu. She's a bubbly, somewhat bemused character whose family manages a local shrine in Ibisu Gaoka. Later in the game, her spiritual prowess manifests in unforeseen ways. Thus, I believe Chisa could either be one of these three things. Either she is a reincarnation of the Miko, like Kagome, she's living a double life, like Rei Hino, or there's something even more supernatural at play. Perhaps the spirit of the Miko is possessing Chisa. The Miko is said to have white hair, but what if Chisa's hair turns white at some point when she overclocks? Chisa, the legendary Miko. Here's my final shot in the dark. What if the Miko is actually Chisa from the future? What if at some point in the future, Chisa overclocks and her hair turns white, and in that state, she's able to use void space to time travel. By using her clipping forte, she could carve her way through and get to the other side safely. Clearly, the Miko must be used to dealing with void matter incidents if she's saving people from the Frostlands consistently, right? Well, no matter how you slice it, Chisa looks to be making a future appearance in a big way, and I am excited for what happens next. I'm curious though, what do you think, dear viewers? This is Life, and this is Life Lessons Gaming, where we discuss games, game stories, and lore. And regarding liking, commenting, and subscribing, hey you, do the thing.